They called her Doc Pocket, but no one ever asked what was in the box she kept under her bed, not until the day she didn't show up for roll call, and her bunk sat undisturbed beneath the Afghan sun. In the field hospital, they unzipped her duffel slowly, expecting notebooks or a spare patch kit, not a metal case triple-locked, and a letter signed by a four-star general. And on the page, a name no one recognized as hers, Captain Elise M. Morales, combat medic, Silver Star with Valor, 2 commendations for field heroics, names of missions that only heard in classified rumors. Until that morning, she was just the quiet one in the back row, the one they rolled their eyes at, said she should have stayed in college, said she'd never keep up. If you believe strength doesn't always shout, and that true soldiers are measured by more than noise, like and subscribe, because this story deserves to be remembered. Elise Morales was not built like the others. At 5'3" with a runner's build and the patience of a librarian, she arrived at FB Renner without a single demand, carrying her gear twice checked and a field manual bookmarked to the section on triage ethics. They expected a liability, and some even whispered worse. Sergeant Travis King, loud and broad-shouldered, had seen 6 tours and let everyone know it, including her. Stay behind the fire line, he'd snapped the first day. You break, we carry you, and we don't got room for passengers. The others chuckled, half out of fear, half out of peer pressure. Elise just nodded. She always nodded. Never interrupted, never defended herself. Her nickname came fast. Doc Pocket. They called her part insult, part novelty. The new medic who looked like she got lost on her way to high school. But Elise wasn't lost. She was always watching, always scanning, always writing something down in that little black notebook she carried in her side pouch. At first, they joked she was writing poetry. Later, they'd learn it was injury patterns, perimeter blind spots, names of those who favored energy drinks over hydration, tendencies to over-tighten their tourniquets. But back then, she was just the girl at the back of the chow line. One night, after chow, PFC Marcus Dent had twisted his knee on a training run. The squad laughed as he limped into the tent. Elise didn't. She cleaned a gash, stabilized the joint, and told him, "It'll hold, but only if you don't lie about the pain." He blinked, caught off guard. It was the first time someone in that camp heard her speak more than a sentence. She wrapped his leg like a pro, patted his shoulder once, and walked off into the sandstorm dusk. By week 3, the jokes got sharper. Let Pocket carry the extra bandages, she ain't carrying anyone else. Bet she weighs less than her own pack. She's gonna get us all killed when it counts. But Elise didn't blink. She checked locks. She memorized radio dead zones. She trained alone. And when the squad prepped for Operation Iron Reaper, a routine sweep of a canyon trail rumor to be dormant, she was assigned rear guard. Again. She didn't argue. At 0617 hours, the first blast hit. An IED ripped through the lead MRAP, flipping it on its side in a thunderclap of metal, fire, and screaming. Dust swallowed the horizon. Sergeant King was hit. Dent too, thrown clear into a ravine, unconscious and bleeding from the neck. Gunfire echoed from the ridge. Ambush. Chaos. Calls scrambled over radios. 2 pinned. Police? Already moving. Not waiting. Not asking. She ran first toward Dent. Slid into the ravine, checking for breath. Found a weak pulse. Tourniquet. Gauze. Stabilized the airway. While bullets stitched the rocks above, she shouldered him, all 190 pounds, and climbed. Not cleanly. Not quickly. But she climbed. When she reached the marker, smoke trailing her path, she dropped him gently. Blood on her shirt. Her hands didn't shake. She turned. Where's King? No answer. Someone said he was gone. She ignored it. Grabbed her kit. Ran back again. Through crossfire. To the wreck. King was bleeding out beside a broken axle. Conscious but fading. He saw her face and choked out, "You're supposed to be in the rear." She didn't reply. Just pressed gauze to the exit wound, wrapped his chest, and whispered, "Don't talk." She hauled him halfway, then dragged the rest. Her arms burned. Her legs buckled. But she moved. When the Medevac rotors arrived, Elise emerged from the smoke like a ghost, one man on her back, another in tow. Her face was ash and sweat and steel. No one moved until she collapsed at the bird's feet, her voice hoarse, vitals stable. Both. Then she passed out. They didn't call her Doc Pocket anymore. Not after that. They called her something else. But she never answered to it. And back in the bunk tent, beneath the old canvas cot, the metal case stayed sealed. Until the day she was gone and someone finally opened it. The next time Elise Morales opened her eyes, the world smelled like iodine and rubber gloves. The ceiling above her was cracked and humming with fluorescent fatigue, and a nurse with a clipboard was muttering numbers without looking at her face. The chart read concussion, dehydration, rib stress fractures, but Elise didn't need paper to know her body had been pushed past its limit. Only that the 2 men she dragged weren't in the morgue, and that meant she could rest. Sort of. She tried to sit up, failed once, then again. On the 3rd try, she swung her legs over the cot and winced. The base was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Outside the tent, the wind scraped sand against aluminum siding like a dry whisper. Elise reached for her boots. Her hand trembled slightly, but she got them on. She always got them on. She didn't want thanks. Didn't expect applause. But as she limped past the infirmary flap, she felt it. Silence, like a room that had been caught eavesdropping on a truth no one knew how to process. People stared. Not cruelly this time. Just awkwardly. Respectfully. Dent, bandaged head and arm in a sling, stood awkwardly near the chow line and gave her a nod. Not the kind you give to a buddy, but the kind you give to someone who just rewrote what you thought you knew. Elise nodded back. Didn't stop. Later, in the operations tent, Sergeant King sat in a wheelchair, his midsection wrapped like a fragile secret. He looked up as she entered. For once, the room didn't fall into the usual rhythm of jokes and dismissals. King tried to speak. Couldn't. Tried again. I was wrong, he said finally. You didn't belong in the rear. You belonged wherever it mattered. Elise blinked once, then twice, unsure how to hold a moment like that without dropping it. But before she could reply, the tent flapped open, and a colonel none of them recognized stepped inside. Commander of the battalion. Everyone stood. At ease, he said, but no one relaxed. In his hands was a manila folder. Thick. Worn. Who here knows who carried out the emergency evac on Reaper Ridge? He asked. No one answered. Then King, to his credit, pointed. Corporal Morales. The colonel nodded. Haven't seen a maneuver like that since Fallujah. The after-action report reads like something out of a movie script. 2 extractions. Under fire. 0 fatalities. 1 field medic. He paused, then added, recommendation for Silver Star is in motion. But that's not why I'm here. He stepped toward Elise, handed her the folder. Inside, photos. Maps. Coordinates. A file she didn't recognize with her name on the cover, but a different title. Captain. Elise looked up, confused. I'm not. You were, the colonel said. Classified program. Volunteer field agents. You signed off before Kandahar deployment, remember? You were activated when the squad needed something more than protocol. She remembered, vaguely, a weird clause in her enlistment package. A side box no one ever explained. She signed it because it didn't seem to matter. She was wrong. Her field decisions, it turned out, had been monitored. Logged. Evaluated. Her precision under fire wasn't just luck, it was what she was trained for. What no one else had seen because they were too busy laughing. King cleared his throat. Why didn't you say anything? Elise shrugged. Because saying it doesn't make it real. Doing it does. The colonel grinned faintly, then looked around. Some of you owe her more than an apology. You owe her your lives. And if you've got a problem with that, you can explain it to the brass when we get back stateside. No one said a word. Outside the tent, the wind picked up. Elise stepped out into it, folder still in hand, sun catching on the corner of a grainy photo of her dragging King through smoke. Someone had taken the image from a drone feed. It was now labeled, Operation Iron Reaper, unauthenticated rescue by solo field agent. That night, back in the barracks, her bunk was different. Someone had placed a clean towel there. A bottle of electrolyte water. Her boots had been polished. No one admitted to doing it. In her duffel, someone had quietly tucked a note. We see you now. She didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just tucked the note into her notebook and closed the flap. In the weeks that followed, no one called her Doc Pocket. They called her Morales, or ma'am. Even Dent. Especially Dent. On patrol, she still walked in the rear, by choice. Because that's where she could see everything. Because that's where no one was looking. Because when you carry 2 men through fire, no one gets to tell you where you belong ever again. And yet, the shadow box under her bed remained sealed. Because for Elise, the story wasn't finished. Not until every soldier, loud or quiet, learned that leadership isn't volume. It's vision. And courage doesn't need approval. Just purpose. They never called it a ceremony, and Elise Morales wouldn't have attended if they had. But by dawn, the courtyard at FOB Renner was packed wall to wall with troops in uniform, most of them standing awkwardly, unsure whether to clap, salute, or simply say nothing. There was no podium, no anthem, no high-ranking general flown in from Kabul. Just a table, a folder, a single commendation lying in a velvet-lined case, and one empty chair. Elise didn't sit in it. She stood in the back, arms folded, wearing the same boots she'd worn during Iron Reaper, dust and all. No ribbons on her chest. No nameplate. No grand entrance. Just her, quiet, watching. The colonel stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Not every hero wears their valor on their sleeve," he said. "Some carry it in their silence. And some," he glanced at her, "carry it on their back, twice, through enemy fire." The crowd didn't erupt. This wasn't that kind of moment. It held like a held breath. Elise didn't blink. She didn't move when the colonel held up the silver star, or when he announced her promotion, retroactive to the week before the mission. She didn't even flinch when Sergeant Kane, now out of the wheelchair and walking with a cane, stood in front of the formation and spoke into the mic. "I judged her. I mocked her. I said she didn't belong," he said, voice cracking. "Then I bled out while she tied off my artery with a grenade pin and dragged me half a mile through open fire. I don't deserve to wear the same patch as her." He turned to her then, and everyone else followed. Dint saluted first, then the others. One by one, they lifted their hands to their brows, not by rank, not by rule, but by something older. Respect earned the hard way. Elise returned the gesture, but just barely. A nod, nothing more. Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the blast walls, Elise packed her things. Not because she was leaving, but because she had a new assignment, training field medics at a joint NATO facility. She didn't tell anyone. She just cleared her bunk, zipped her duffel, and paused at the footlocker. Inside, the box still sat unopened. Her promotion papers lay beside it. She stared at them for a long time. Then, quietly, she lifted the lid. The medals were there, gleaming softly in the fading light. Her old ID badge. A single photo. Her, smiling in a pre-deployment briefing, before the jokes, before the fire. And tucked beneath it, folded so precisely it looked untouched, the letter from command. For actions above and beyond the call of duty under hostile fire, demonstrating unmatched composure, tactical improvisation, and valor. At the bottom, a handwritten note from the Brigadier General. "You weren't supposed to be there, but thank God you were." Elise didn't smile. She folded the letter again, slid it into her bag, and left the medals behind. They weren't why she served. Outside, a young recruit stood awkwardly by the door, holding a clipboard and trying to look useful. "Ma'am," he stammered. "They said to escort you to the chopper." She nodded. No words, just a nod. As she passed him, he whispered, "You're kind of a legend, you know." Elise paused, turned, and said the only thing she'd said all day: "Legends don't need notebooks." Then she walked into the dusk. Weeks passed. The base moved on. New deployments, new officers, new recruits. But they told the story now. Not from a briefing slide, not from a press release, but in whispers by the fire, in quiet barracks, in medical training classes. The story of the medic who carried two men when no one thought she could carry herself. Who didn't speak up until her actions shouted loud enough to silence a battalion. The story of a box under a bunk, unopened until it was too late. They don't call her Doc Pocket anymore. They just call her Morales. And that's enough. Somewhere, at another base, another young medic checks her kit twice before patrol, runs drills, sharpens her judgment in silence. And before stepping out into the dust, she tightens her boots and says, almost to herself, wherever it matters. Because now they know. The strongest ones don't demand attention. They carry it. Through fire. Through doubt. Through silence.